in our movement that we came out of, many of us who are here in Chicago. So this is the time for the students in Chicago to connect with other students around the country and carve out some space to keep the tradition of resistance and the fight and the spirit of the reparations movement. Because it's one thing to go to the United Nations and participate in a conference and get included in a document, language. That's what we did. We got included in a document, language, that they've been trying to dilute. So the question is, what is the strategy now? What is the role of the next generation, the young people who are here and the young people across the country who are in the streets? The transatlantic slave trade, slavery, and colonialism are crimes against humanity, and they have not been able to take that language out of the document. Y'all got it? Now what set us back was 9/11. And people flipped out and got patriotic and wanted to raise the red, white, and blue. But despite that, August 17, 2002, we had 50,000 people in the street for the first major reparations rally held in the United States. So I could go on and on and on about our work as someone, I guess, who's become an elder. But it is this generation, it's this new wave of activism in America that must define itself in the context of the African tradition of resistance, organizing, the African principle, the greatest good for the greatest number, and kick some ass. I mean, that's the only way I know to talk. We have an opportunity to piggyback off the 1960s and take it up a notch. Because when I started my activism in 1964, I was a Negro. Do you get that? We were Negroes, and we participated in a process and were impacted, and we became black. And not only did we become black, we began to re-identify with Africa, and we began saying, we are an African people. Yo, ho, 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 ho. But we've had a lot of setbacks because what white supremacy wants to do with us right now, with our young people, is to have our young people believe that race is not important. And once they take away your strength, then it dilutes your whole being as a people. We are an African people. That is the first step, and we must organize around being African. No matter what other movements intrude or get in the way, or what other movements our people are involved in. Our people are involved in every movement they got, that white folks got. Do you understand that? But our job is to carve out and take from the energy and the spirit of the 1960s, and not only the 1960s, the 1950s, the 1940s, the 1930s, the 1920s, the 19th century, the 18th century, and take that spirit to reclaim who we are as an African people and to move for African independence. Y'all, and I don't know how to do that right now. I have a lot of documents. I brought a bag here. Y'all can come to my office and read all this stuff and get educated. But I would say that one of the things that might help the coming generation is one of our young scholar activists from Chicago who earned his master's degree at the Center for Inner City Studies and went on to get his PhD, has written a book that just came out that's very important for our young people and all of us to read, called Fighting for Our Place in the Sun. Malcolm X and the radicalization of the black student movement 1960 to 1970 that captured SNCC and the impact of Malcolm on the student movement of the 1960s that produced SOBU, that produced YOBU, that produced Malcolm X Liberation University, that led into the Black Power movement, African Liberation Day, the Congress of African People, the African Liberation Support Committee, that all came out of the work that was being done and led by the young people in this country. So this is a defining moment, and we need intergenerational connection so that you should study what happened before to update it for where we are right now with the continuation of the murder of our people across this country. Do y'all got it? Yes. So, you know, I can go on, and those of you who know me know that I can go on. And as I get older, I try to discipline myself and not take over a meeting and bore everybody with that. But the Durban 400 and the project that we embarked upon, and some of those memories, you look up on the screen, Baba Hannibal Afrique, an ancestor, was on that trip. Marcel Porter, an ancestor who was on that trip. And many of others who were on that trip who are no longer physically with us when I looked at that documentary. So the most important aspect of this strategy of having included in a document at the United Nations is the transatlantic slave trade, slavery and colonialism, crimes against humanity. The question is, what is the next step? And the next step is what Malcolm told us and instructed us to do in the 1960s when he suggested that our struggle should no longer be placed in the context of a civil rights struggle, that our struggle was a human rights struggle, and we should take our case before an international body and ultimately take the United States government to a world court. Do y'all understand? That was in the 1960s. And so the Durban process was a step in that direction. So in order to take the United States to a world court, you have to get the agreement of the United Nations and the General Assembly to say that this officially is a crime before the total body, and that the next step is to take the particular nation or nation to court. Because crimes against humanity have no statute of limitation. Are y'all with me? So it seems to me that the next step is to continue to keep the pressure in this period of the UN decade to acknowledge people of African descent, to keep putting pressure on the United States, on the United Nations to take the United States government and the slave trading nations before the world court. Am I making sense? Yes. So, is that what you want me to do, man? All right, well, Black Power.
Dr. Worrill is the chairman emeritus of the National Black United Front. I'm going to bring up the National Secretary of the National Black United Front, Toriana Granger. Baragani. So Brother Cam just mentioned that we only have about 15 minutes before we get out of here. That doesn't mean y'all have 15 minutes. But I guess we need to move this along a little quicker. And one of the things that I wanted to do, and Dr. Worrill started on this, was I wanted to, of the people that I know of and I remember from the Durban 400, I wanted to acknowledge, and maybe I would like to do a moment of silence for the ones that I can remember. And I want to read their names off real quick. Brother Charles Rowland, our elder Seydou Enjoy, Baba Hannibal Afrique, Elder Roho Shenda, who was 80 years old on the trip, Pauline White out of Chicago, our Queen Mother of Inba, Marcel Porter, Ilombe Brath, and I believe also Dorothy Ben Lewis. And then there was one elder, she was actually the eldest of the elders out of New York, and I do not recall her name, but she was, I believe she was 90 years old on the trip.
Dr. Edward Spears.
Dr. Spears died.
Dr. Spears, thank you. All right, thank you. So I wanted to call up, and I'm gonna keep my comments to myself at this point in time, but I want to call up one by one each of the members that are here. I think that's 2, 4, 5 people I see. And I'm going to start with the female principal and start with Sister Muriel Bach.
Thank you, Toriano. Thank you, Brother Cam. I want to say two things. First is that the Durban 400 was not a loose group of individuals. We were prepared. We didn't come to Durban to figure out what we were going to do. INBUF held seminars to get us ready to go. We knew what to do. We knew what the issues were. Each of us could speak to the issues. And that kind of, it's always a mistake to skimp on training and education and preparation. That's all I've got to say. I think that's important for the young people, is to make sure that everyone in your group is being brought along, is ready to be a leader. The second thing is that as activists, when we talk to our people about liberation, about Pan-Africanism, often we are confronted with, don't give me none of that African stuff, that black stuff. Black people ain't never gonna get together. And my greatest takeaway from Durban was that black people were together, we were united. There were obvious efforts to disunite us, to take us away from our issue, and we remained on task, and we protested.